It's the man has no class. He has no kindness in his dark, dark heart. And he's depraved. That's my opinion. This is a depraved, disgusting individual about whom I wish to hear nothing after this trial is done. The question is he a criminal? Is he basically akin to a mob boss running several criminal enterprises? And while it's very clear to me he is a depraved, disgusting person, we have to prove that he violated the law. I actually think it's going to be pretty easy, but I can see what the defense is doing here, trying to say, all right, he has these, quote, freak-offs, weird, kinky group sex in Hollywood. That's not an illegal thing. It happens all the time. We're all going to take a disgusting trip to his seedy, awful world. The man has no class. He has no kindness in his dark, dark heart. And he's depraved. That's my opinion. This is a depraved, disgusting individual.
In a primetime special that landed like a legal thunderclap, veteran broadcaster Megyn Kelly converted her Manhattan studio into a courtroom of public opinion and, for 20 uninterrupted minutes, dissected the allegations against music mogul Sean Diddy Combs.
And what's really going to be interesting is the parade of celebrities who we expect to be mentioned and or called into that courtroom. People who we hadn't heard about prior, like Mike Myers, Austin Powers, Mike Myers. Why is he getting called? Why is he on the witness list? That'll be fascinating. And then, of course, there are the no-name, quote unquote, women who are going to have to find every ounce of courage they have to sit on that witness stand across from someone who can buy and sell their whole families, who is accused of behaving violent in the past toward both male and female adversaries or so-called friends who ticked him off. He allegedly firebombed this one rapper's car for allegedly being interested in the same woman. There are questions about whether he's potentially done worse than that to others. And these young women with no power and no money who could put him behind bars for the rest of his life have to sit there, look him in the eye, and say what he did to them. Now, that's going to be a very tall order. There's already been a question about whether one has bailed. They couldn't find this one witness late last week, and the prosecution wasn't sure whether she'd left, pieced out. And even if they don't piece out, will they stick by their stories on the stand? It's a very, very tall order.
She opened with the leaked hotel hallway video showing Combs assaulting Cassie Ventura, freezing keyframes, annotating timestamps, and overlaying sworn statements for context. Pivoting smoothly, Kelly invoked her years as a corporate litigator, stacking message thread screenshots, financial ledgers, and travel records into a timeline that left no visible gaps. Each exhibit arrived with a brisk legal explainer: assault, coercion, potential racketeering, making complex statutes accessible to millions. Mid-segment, she locked eyes with the camera and declared, "The pattern is unmistakable." Hashtags exploded. Newsroom rundowns were rewritten in real time. Viewers were urged to download an evidence packet from the show notes, turning passive spectators into armchair jurors. By broadcast's end, petitions urging brands to sever ties with Combs were already circulating. Industry insiders now describe the exposé as a genuine pivot point. The instant corporate boardrooms began drafting contingency plans, and long quiet allies weighed the cost of continued loyalty.
After she went to rehab, she wrote a book about her experience, and she had her lawyer send it to Combs. She wanted to be compensated for the pain that he had put her through, she said, and she asked for $30 million. Combs, she was told, didn't take this seriously. Later, when she filed a civil lawsuit against him, we found out yesterday that he ended up settling that for $20 million. She, of course, was still required to take the stand in this criminal case. And when she was asked, Errol, why she is testifying in this case, she said, "I'm here to do the right thing. I can't carry this anymore. The shame, the guilt." But in terms of the case that we're starting to see the prosecution weave, we're seeing the foundations of their charges of racketeering, of sex trafficking, of transportation for prostitution. Cassie's testimony has revealed how, in a way, she was almost like a sex slave for Sean Combs. He directed everything that she did, the way that he made her orchestrate these freak-offs that they were engaged in. He had her travel with him. They had escorts traveling to meet them. There were employees who were involved in this, so that ties into this allegation that he was running a criminal enterprise that was running all of this.
Court transcripts render the chaos in a sterile line. Defendant became disruptive, but eyewitnesses describe a psychological implosion. Day 4 of jury selection was crawling along when Sean Combs glanced at a buzzing phone, scowled, and thrust the screen toward attorney Ben Braffman.
And singer Dawn Richard from the girl group Danity Kane, she is likely on the famous people list because she's one of Diddy's many accusers.
Yeah.
Not in his criminal case, but she sued him civilly last year, claiming that she saw him abuse Cassie, his girlfriend, and that she herself was sexually assaulted, deprived of food, and cheated out of money that she was owed. Guess what? You're going to hear from her attorney in just a hot minute. But first, I want to bring in News Nation correspondent Caitlin Becker, who's outside the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan. Caitlin's been covering this case gavel to gavel. Okay, first of all, let's just start with the drip, drip, drip of all the names, because the internet is really on fire. What happened today?
You know, Ashley, a lot of the same things. You get asked these same exact questions about these celebrities with no real context as to why. And you really hit the nail on the head a minute ago when you said jury selection's kind of boring, but not in the Diddy case. Most prospective jurors who come into jury selection have never heard of the defendant, let alone have an opinion of them. But what we heard today was prospective jurors who were excluded because they flat out said they don't like Diddy going into it. They don't have a favorable opinion. One guy said he believed Diddy has enough money to buy his way out of jail. So those jurors immediately excluded. There was also some laughs in the courtroom today from the attorneys and the judge when one prospective juror said that he couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't be able to smoke marijuana for all 8 to 10 weeks of the trial. So that person was excluded. But by the end of the day, they've added 10 more people to that pool of 45 that they're trying to get.
In a heartbeat, he vaulted from his chair, scattering legal pads like confetti. "She's lying," he roared, voice ricocheting off marble walls. Security lunged while clerks froze, unsure whether to restrain a man once photographed with presidents. Combs paced the aisle, hair wild, loosening his tie as though suffocating. He shoved the phone into his lawyers' faces, repeating, "They're turning on me." Every spectator heard him. Reporters saw fear flash beneath the anger. A man watching brickwork crumble. The judge's gavel cracked, but the shouting drowned it out. Only when bailiffs formed a human barricade did the defendant retreat behind whispered counsel. As the gallery emptied, seasoned correspondents whispered, this was the moment any illusion of composure died. Veteran courthouse reporters, hardened by decades of sensational trials, admitted they had never felt an energy shift so fast. It was as if decorum itself had been torn in half, exposing the raw nerves beneath. Judicial decorum is not a courtesy. It is the load-bearing wall of justice, and Judge Eleanor Watkins reinforced that architecture within hours. She summoned counsel to chambers, ordered an expedited transcript, and set a rare conduct review hearing for dawn. Sources inside the clerk's office confirm she is weighing new bail terms, daily check-ins, tighter travel boundaries, and a ban on unsupervised smartphone use in the courthouse. The proposed sanctions echo measures typically reserved for violent offenders, underscoring the severity of the breach. Courtroom veterans note that such swift action is almost unheard of for a first outburst. Meanwhile, jury consultants are in a panic. Voir dire now requires locating citizens who somehow missed the viral clip. Prosecutors filed notice that they will reference the incident as proof of the temperament Cassie Ventura described. Calm one moment, terrifying the next. Defense lawyers argue the blow-up was stress-induced and irrelevant to the facts, but the judge's stony expression when proceedings resumed signaled skepticism. Observers say the court's integrity, once assumed, now hinges on her ability to reassert control. The immediate message to Combs: the bench will not tolerate another fracture in its courtroom wall. Reputation management functions on compound interest. Slow deposits of goodwill, sudden withdrawals of scandal. Sean Combs just triggered a bank run. For months, the defense projected calm professionalism, tailored suits, measured statements, charity spotlights, only to watch it vaporize in a 10-second viral clip replayed on every phone in America. Social analytics firms tallied 32 million views within 12 hours, dwarfing his most watched music videos. You can't stuff that genie back. Crisis consultant Faith Delgado told our newsroom. Sponsors quickly smelled liability. A high-end vodka brand paused a spring rollout within 90 minutes. A fashion retailer scrubbed ads before dawn. Behind closed doors, defense strategists shredded talking point decks and drafted new ones that spin the tantrum as momentary fatigue. Yet veteran litigators admit sympathy rarely survives visual evidence. Expect a pivot to medical explanations: exhaustion, hypertension, perhaps medication side effects. Prosecutors, however, need only press play. By turning himself into Exhibit A, Combs demolished the genteel image his attorneys promised jurors and handed the opposition a raw display of temper impossible to cross-examine away. For the defense, every closing argument now starts in a credibility deficit. For 18 months, Cassie Ventura allowed legal filings to speak for her, cultivating the quiet dignity that often anchors survivor narratives. Megyn Kelly's endorsement changed the acoustic of that silence overnight. Ventura's long-dormant social feeds flickered to life. A discreet like on a domestic abuse coalition post, a heart on a thread titled "Turning Tide," and a single word from her own account: grateful. Those soft signals generated 500,000 interactions, instantly recalibrating boardroom risk equations. Inside strategy sessions, Ventura, once hesitant to revisit her darkest memories, instructed counsel to reopen sections of testimony previously redacted. She felt the courtroom climate had shifted in her favor. The next morning, her lead attorney delivered an unscheduled, sealed evidentiary packet, caught in a photographer's lens as it crossed the courthouse threshold, fueling speculation of fresh corroboration. Psychologists advising the prosecution say visible public support can embolden traumatized witnesses, turning private anguish into trial-ready resolve. Even potential jurors in cafeteria lines absorb the momentum. Human nature gravitates toward the story gaining force. Ventura's decision to lean into that momentum could convert passive sympathy into active credibility, the single most valuable commodity in any high-profile trial. Hollywood's gatekeepers track scandal tremors with seismic precision, and Wednesday's aftershock redlined their charts. Before the courthouse security sweep had ended, 7 A-list celebrities quietly unfollowed Combs, digital distancing decoded instantly by entertainment watchdogs. By afternoon, an Oscar winner, a chart-topping pop star, and a late-night icon had canceled interviews where producers planned trial questions, citing everything from laryngitis to travel complications. Corporate reactions were just as swift. A multinational spirits company halted a limited-edition liquor co-branded with Combs, despite labels already printed. A major fashion retailer yanked his clothing line from its summer catalog proofs. Internal memos leaked, laden with phrases like reputational risk scenarios and alternative influencers. Talent agencies circulated blunt advisories. Clients should withhold public endorsements until clarity emerges. Studio lawyers, meanwhile, scoured contracts for morality clause exits. Association is the lifeblood of celebrity capital, and disassociation spreads fast. Once prestige partners bolt, mid-tier collaborators rush not to be last out. Within 24 hours, the brand once considered magnetic morphed into a liability case study circulated in crisis communication workshops. A new boardroom mantra ghosted through Hollywood elevators: silence is complicity, and complicity costs market share. Prosecutors now call their witness list the tightrope, each name balancing fear of retaliation against duty to testify. Most slated to appear are everyday professionals, assistants, drivers, dancers, whose incomes could evaporate with a single industry blacklist. One witness, codenamed Jane 4, vanished for 48 hours last week, igniting whispers of coercion before re-emerging under police escort. Victim advocacy coalitions have arranged safe houses and round-the-clock security, measures more familiar to organized crime trials than celebrity cases. The courtroom eruption magnified anxieties. If Combs can explode in public under judicial glare, what might occur in private hallways? Trauma specialists warn that raised voices can trigger flashbacks, potentially chilling testimony. Prosecutors petitioned for comfort accommodations, therapy dogs, closed-circuit testimony, screens obstructing direct eye contact, while the defense insists such allowances prejudice jurors. Judge Watkins will rule next week, yet appellate history shows protective modifications rarely overturned once safety is documented. Ultimately, witness courage may depend less on courtroom protocol than on the expanding chorus of public support, a digital safety net woven tweet by tweet, giving each reluctant voice strength enough to step onto the rope. Media ecosystems pivot when audience appetite matches editorial reward, and that fusion occurred the instant Kelly's monologue trended worldwide. Morning shows that once buried the Combs story inside quick-hit segments expanded to 8-minute legal panels. A flagship cable network devoted an hour-long town hall titled Power, Privilege, and Accountability in Entertainment, notching its best Wednesday ratings in 10 years. Investigative desks at 2 rival newspapers announced a joint probe, an uncommon ceasefire prompted by the scale of documents suddenly in play. Even ad-sensitive entertainment sites published banner headlines, citing Kelly's dossier as foundational material. TikTok creators stitched courtroom footage with survivor soundbites, generating millions of grassroots impressions beyond legacy gatekeepers. Combs' PR team, desperate to regain narrative ground, issued 3 statements in 24 hours. A reactive spiral that crisis strategists warn amplifies the very story they wish to bury. Neutral viewers absorb detail after detail, and neutrality erodes into provisional judgment. Absent a game-changing evidence reversal, editors predict coverage will only intensify when opening statements commence, positioning the trial as 2025's defining media saga. Celebrity image control resembles plate spinning. Keep enough stories airborne and the public applauds the balance. Sean Combs' plates crash simultaneously on day 4, the clatter echoing through every branch of his empire. Memes of his clenched jaw and airborne paperwork now orbit cyberspace, reducing decades of cultivated charisma to a slow-motion loop of rage. Credit default swap spreads on his holding company widened overnight, a financial metric translating to one blunt verdict: elevated risk. Corporate partners, smelling exposure, draft termination letters under morals clauses. Online, Believe Women appears alongside his name more than any album title, signaling an involuntary rebrand. Prosecutors will exploit the footage, juxtaposing it with composed testimony from accusers to highlight temperament contrasts. Veteran defense attorneys admit, off-record, that winning jury sympathy after such imagery is an uphill two-front war, one fought in court, the other in every living room replaying the clip. Combs may contest every count, but the broader storyline, composure, credibility, control, has slipped beyond his reach. What remains is salvage, and history records few figures emerging stronger once the audience has watched the mask fall in real time.